here's my problem. If we want to do like a funny little quote at the beginning, I don't know. I know on the third one, we'll pretend to frolic around on a bed. But I don't know what to say for the first one. You shall not pass.
This is a You Shall Not Pass.
Oh, good.
There's your quote, buddy. You know the quotes. Welcome to Your Inner Child is an Idiot, the podcast where we look back on the movies and TV shows from your childhood and figure out if they were any good to begin with. My name's Damon.
I'm DJ.
Hi, DJ. How you doing? Welcome.
I'm good. We have become the fellowship. We're here for the food, the fellowship, and the fun.
Wow. And there's going to be an altar call at the end.
So
anytime, aside from this specific example of the Fellowship of the Rings, anytime you hear the word fellowship, get the fuck out.
I'm out.
No, absolutely not. There are no rings? Absolutely not.
You have to wait for a second?
I enjoyed all the Caedmon's Call CDs you burned for me, but I just have to say no.
When they said invoke the word fellowship, if you're in a situation where you're not sure, if you're in a church, it's, you knew what you were getting into. But if you're in any other situation, first you wait for 2 seconds to find out whether they say they also invoke the ring, in which case you're cool. Otherwise, run for the hills.
If they invoke Christian athletes, book it.
Fellowship of the Christian athletes.
Damn it! He threw that direct article in there.
Okay, so this is the 2001.
2001.
Okay, this is we're getting into it. Peter Jackson trilogy.
Buckle up. Get comfortable. Hope you got a pillow on that seat.
We were just wee babes when this came out, of 19 years old.
As was Elijah Wood.
Oh, we were the same age. Is he the same age as us, roughly?
He's remained the same age as us.
He's still
after
the same
all these
age.
years, he's kept up. You got to hand it to him.
See, I thought, he was going to get bigger because of the feet, like a puppy. Like you could tell.
You saw those feet and you're like, okay.
He's going to be a big boy. He's going to be a big boy. Here we go. Yeah.
Just stayed the same size.
Yeah. Okay. So my biggest challenge with these movies is remembering where one ends and the other begins. Not because, they were all there. That's intentional. It's one big long story, but also it's just a big melange of very long movies with a lot of things that I didn't understand was going on at the time.
Well, I have a little trick to remembering which one's which. If you think about when you saw it and it was 2002, that's The Two Towers.
Okay.
If you think about it and it was 2003, that's Return of the King.
Okay.
And if you think about it and it was 1977, that's the Rankin Bass Hobbit that we just watched.
Hobbit. Okay.
And if you look,
if you think about it, and you were -5 when you saw it. Yeah.
And if there's a lot of psychedelics around you, that's the animated version from who's that other one? Ralph Bashki's Lord of the Rings that came out in the 70s as well.
I didn't even know about this.
Well, I was why don't you talk about your memories of the movie, and I can talk about Ralph Bashki's attempt to adapt Lord of the Rings as well as other things.
Like a lot of people my age, I didn't grow up. Like, I knew about Lord of the Rings. I feel like that was a thing that, my dad would have read. But I knew about the Hobbit cartoon. I read the Hobbit in school, and I think we watched the cartoon. It wasn't, very impactful for me, but I liked it. It was a cartoon that we got to watch in class for it.
Always a plus.
Yeah, but otherwise it was more about, I knew these books existed, but they didn't mean anything to me. I remember the most I knew about them was that Robert Plant references Gollum, the evil one, crept up and slept away with her.
Wait, doesn't Shadowfax get a call out in a Led Zeppelin song?
He might. I don't remember that. There were a few Tolkien references.
It had a boom in the late 60s and 70s.
Yeah. So I definitely knew what was going, that existed, but it wasn't a thing for me. And fantasy in general, I was kind of I came in through the side door through sci-fi, and eventually enjoy some fantasy, but it wasn't a big thing for me. And this is if you're even tangentially into fantasy, you usually like Lord of the Rings books, right?
Right.
It was like a cinema event to go see these movies. And I was definitely on board. It looked great. Even as someone who was like, fantasy, I don't know. These movies look amazing. I remember that. Hopefully that'll hold up. I think it will, because I know they did a lot of things to like, similar to Jurassic Park in the sense that it's not all perfect, but they did a lot of like practical effects to sort of reduce in 10 years from now, people being like, oh.
Right. Why is this Tyrannosaurus Rex 8?
Right.
Yeah, they did a lot of miniatures, and they did a lot of in-camera tricks, like to make people look smaller. Yeah. I mean, it still has a lot of fucking CGI in it, but I think they did a lot of things that helps alleviate that dated look that a lot of CGI stuff can have.
And I know this is going to upset you as a fan of these more than me.
I'm going to fucking turn off this. I swear to God, I will turn off this mic. I don't even know what it is, but I'm so defensive.
They're most famously very long. And I remember all three of these movies being, even in the theatrical cut, too long for me, for my attention span, for my interest in the story. And not in the sense that I was like, oh, this is a total piece of shit, but it was definitely like, look, I was with you, but then you just took too long.
You killed the wizard, that felt like an ending point, and then you just kept on.
The credits come, and you're like, good for you, honey.
Yeah, they are famously long, which I think of as a good thing. I don't know what your problem is. Oh, thank God these things are long, is what I said. I was, of course, a big fan of the books, and so when the movies were announced, I was probably it would have been still my senior year of high school when I heard that they were like starting casting. And me and my other gigantic nerd friends, are all started like with our fantasy.
I'm just picturing like
our fantasy cast.
Enormous people with pocket protectors. You're gigantic nerds.
They were literal gigantic nerds. 9 feet tall they were. I mean, it wasn't the early days of the internet. I mean, the teenage days of the internet. You would sort of get information in drips and drabs. And I remember my friend David would, we would talk about who we want.
Reloading the Yahoo homepage to find out.
Yeah, exactly. Going to the onering.net and hearing any news we can get. So I was very excited. It was also like, it came out, I mean, it was in, I guess I would say it was in pre-production, like all during my freshman year of college when, I was in a new place and very alone a lot of the time. So, I mean, why wouldn't I just keep poring over information from a movie being filmed half a world away? I followed this movie. It's probably like the last movie that I like followed as closely as possible. Like, when's this movie going to come out? When can I get any information? I tried to download the trailer when it came out, and it took so fucking long that I ended up going to see with my friends Cody and Kristin. Cody I think he was okay with Lord of the Rings. He was Lord of the Rings curious. Kristin had no interest in Lord of the Rings. But that didn't stop us from going to see the political, historical drama 13 Days about the Cuban Missile Crisis when the first Lord of the Rings trailer because it was attached on the movie. By the way, Kevin Costner's accent in that movie is absolutely terrible. So he not only can't do an English accent, as we noticed with Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, he cannot do a Boston accent either.
Does he do that in that?
Sport. He calls his son Sport in it, and it's absolutely the worst. Sport. So I was super excited about this, but I was also very nervous because fantasy movies are not like weren't a big thing at the time.
Could have been a flop.
So it was also a huge gamble.
They spent a shitload of money on it.
There's Rankin Bass's The Hobbit that we watched last week, but then there's also Ralph Bakshi's Lord of the Rings that came out in the 70s as well, where he attempted to adapt The Lord of the Rings as an animated film. He was going to do 2 movies, split it right in the middle, and he made one. And no one saw it, and so he never made another one. And the weird thing is that the people who made the Hobbit movie went and made The Return of the King. They didn't make the other half of the 2 towers that he was making. So there's the first half of the trilogy, so 1.5 books, and then the last book, and then this last half of the 2 towers, just fucking figure it out. That's what Hollywood say. You can figure it out from the context.
Read the books, you idiots.
Ralph Bakshi's movie is also interesting in that it's very well animated as well, and in a much more It's a very nicer style, at least to my eyes, than the Hobbit movie was, where every line has the same weight. But he also rotoscopes it, so he like actually filmed actors on on a stage and then would like draw over them. So they have very natural movements. But the weird thing about the Two Towers or the Lord of the Rings animated movie is that it gets more psychedelic as you watch it. And so, like, by the end, he's just, like, filming huge battle scenes and just, instead of drawing over them, painting over them. So it just looks like photocopied film, like, with psychedelic backgrounds. It's so weird. And if you're interested at all, I would highly recommend it. It's weird.
Yeah. I didn't even know that it existed. So
I was very nervous about this movie that it would fail or that I would hate it. And then the only like big budget, Lord of the Rings movie that came out, I would hate. But I loved it. I absolutely loved these movies. I was so excited. I think I saw them in the theaters 3 times. For Christmas, the following Christmas, I got the extended edition, which is like adds another fucking hour to the movie. Lucky you. I fell completely in love with this. But the other problem was, because I was in college and had sort of spent most of my time before I made a good glut of friends, talking about how I was following this movie, everyone was like, what should we get Damon, our new friend, for Christmas? Oh, what about all this fucking Lord of the Rings stuff that is now on sale in every bookstore we go to? So I got a huge pile of Lord of the Rings stuff, like a Tolkien bestiary, which goes over every race and animal in the Lord of the Rings. I got a day-to-day calendar. People went to Burger King because they had like a tie-in thing, and they would buy Happy Meals and get me these little figurines. It was insane. And I was like, guys, you've made me...
Now I'm the Lord of the Rings
into a bigger nerd than I was before. And now I have all this knowledge about like all the different races of Lord of the Rings.
Had you read the books before it came out?
I had I read the books when I was in middle school. I've never read the Silmarillion.
Seems like more of a peruse kind of book.
My favorite quote about the Silmarillion is I was reading it once at our friend LT's house. She had someone over for dinner, and he saw the Silmarillion out, and he was like, who's reading the Silmarillion? I was like, I just started it again. And he's like, it's all seeds and stems, man. You ain't going to get high off that. It's all seeds and stems. And that's what I think every time I see it. I'm like, it's all seeds and stems.
Excellent.
Anyway, I love these movies. I have minor quibbles with them about the books, and I have read the books recently because I may bring that up when we start reviewing these. But I love them. I love them.
All right, so we're going to watch Lord of the Rings, Fellowship of the Ring.
To be clear, we're going to watch the theatrical release. We're going to watch the short version,
quote unquote short version. The
short asterisk
it's
versions.
The least long versions that you can find.
Mostly because I haven't seen these. Yeah. I mean, I do still watch the Lord of the Rings movies, but I haven't seen the theatrical versions in a long time.
Yeah, I mean, there's some interest. I mean, I remember watching the longer cuts with what do you call? Are they called directorial cuts? What are they called?
I think they're called the extended editions.
Yeah, I remember we watched the extended editions, and I remember there's some interesting things in there, but I do, to like really capture, the theater, what we experienced when we first saw it. I think we're just going to watch the theatrical cut. So watch along with us. We'll be right back. Listen, not all of us have infinitely valuable, evil rings that rule other rings. And
Are you just going into the commercial casually like this?
Some of us need money. So if you want to help us make this show, you can help support the show. Patreon.com/Your Inner Child is an Idiot. You can get your name right in the credits, get your name in the written credits, get a drawing by Damon, you can get a song by me. We'll come up with something else. What else do you want? Tell us. We'll figure it out.
Now, coming off aggressive now. You're going to scare them away.
You want to live stream with us? I don't know. We could probably do that.
No. That's talking to strangers. Absolutely not. But support us.
You want to talk at strangers when they cannot interact.
That is absolutely correct. I mean, I can't phrase it better than that. That is literally what I've wanted my entire life. For me to speak my thoughts without any threat of someone
other than me, as someone very non-threatening.
someone opposing me in any way. I just want to just railroad over anyone.
Patreon.com/Your Inner Child is an Idiot. Okay, Damon, buckle the fuck in because we watched Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring.
Now, I'm buckling in, but it will be a belt buckle, not a shoe buckle, because as a hobbit, I don't wear feet.
You don't.
I don't wear feet.
I don't wear feet. You do wear feet.
No, I very much wear feet. Almost too much, some might say.
I wear too much feet. Okay, here's what I would like to do. I would like to recap this because it's going to be horrible. And I think that might be amusing for our listeners. Okay.
Go ahead.
I actually went through and made bullet points because there's a lot going on in this movie. I'm definitely not going to hit everything, but I am going to spend more time on the prologue because I actually feel like that's the most important part of...
You will mention everyone's father's name though, right?
Yes, I will mention all 12 names for each person, and I will make them all bearded white men so that you cannot tell who's who. Okay. There's a big daddy evil monster guy named Sauron in ancient times. In his faux benevolence, he gives rings to the different races. But in secret, he makes a ring to control the other rings. One ring to rule them all, you might say.
Some did say.
Eventually, there's war across Middle-earth, which is, by the way, where we are in this story.
Just a little sly Chiron there telling you that where you are is
where
here.
you are.
A little mall map right there.
Things look grim across the land, I'll tell you that much. There's this guy, Isildur.
You know, you're doing great.
Okay.
Isildur.
He's basically the ruler of the men. He's the king of men.
Gondor. Yeah.
Of Gondor.
I'm sorry. Go ahead. I'm not going to actually you. Although I really want to actually you.
They're in battle. Isildur is battling Sauron, gets his sword shattered. Things, like I said, not looking great. But he ends up using the sword shard to cut Sauron down, cut his hand off, cuts the ring off. Sauron, that destroys him for some reason. And he takes the ring. Isildur does. Isildur. The only way to get rid of it is to take it to the volcano, to Mordor, where it was forged. The only way to destroy it is to throw it back from whence it came. But the ring is too powerful. Isildur can't resist. He keeps the ring. Eventually,
powerful,
later on...
Like arm wrestling powerful?
Yeah, like over the top, like Sylvester Stallone and over the top. Eventually, he does lose. See, the ring wants to get back. It's evil. It has a will of its own, which is important to understand. It's stupid, but it's important to understand. And so it wants to reconnect with Sauron, give him the power that he needs.
Reconnect on Hinge.
It's really a star-crossed lover sort of situation. Okay, so
you're doing great. We're about 10 minutes into the movie.
I know. So like I said, I'm going to spend most of the time on the intro here. Isildur loses the ring. Eventually, it's found by a young hobbit, Smeagol. He lives in seclusion. The ring drives him mad, gives him unnaturally long life. He becomes the creature Gollum.
Yeah.
This you'll understand Gollum because of our last story, The Hobbit. You remember our encounter. Now we're to Hobbit times. Bilbo finds the ring because once again it has bounced away from its owner because it wants to escape because it's a ring that wants things. Bilbo finds it, uses it in the Hobbit adventures. Now fast forward to now times in Middle Earth. Bilbo's an old man. He's been given long life also by the ring. He hasn't quite been driven quite as mad by the ring yet, but it's been less time. It's been like 60 years or something.
Exactly.
And Gollum was with it for 500 years or something. Bilbo wants to retire to Elfland. Sauron is gaining power in the north. Where is he?
Absolutely not. It is in the southeast.
The southeast. Sauron he's gaining power. He's got poop goblins now that come from the poop of the earth. He's got Saruman, which is another wizard who's on his side. Side note, at one point, Saruman captures Gandalf and just, reveals that he's actually working for Sauron, throws Gandalf on the top of a tower. Eventually, he whispers to a moth. The moth tells an eagle. The eagle comes and saves him. So this is the second time we've seen the eagles. I'm sure they won't come into play again. Sauron sends his forces. They capture Gollum. Gollum tells them, hey, this ring, it's in the Shire. It's with Baggins.
Yeah.
And so now, fuck. We got to leave. Bilbo's left, and so now the ring is in Frodo's hands. Frodo's like, what the fuck? Gandalf's there. He's like, listen, this is up to you now for some reason. Because there's something about hobbits. They're very special creatures. And they have some sort of, or maybe not all of them, but they have some sort of resistance to the ring's power because they don't want much. I mean, Frodo's a trust fund kid. He just wants to sit around under a tree, smoke a pipe.
Yeah.
So he, having the ring, it's tough on him. We'll find that out through more whimpering throughout the movies. But and he also, if he uses the ring's power, it won't be like if it gets in Gandalf's hands and it turns him evil. Man, we're fucked, right? We're off on an adventure. Eventually, they gather a council of people from across Middle Earth. There's like some shit's going down. What's going on? We got the ring here. What's going on? Eventually, they realize they must destroy this ring. They must take it to Mordor. But who's going to do that? You, Damon?
Why do they have to take it to Mordor?
Because that's the only place you can destroy it.
Okay.
Because it's the fucking volcano. It's gotta go from whence it came.
Mm-hmm.
But this is no easy task. Mm-hmm. Mordor's in the southeast,
as I
just learned, and it's far away. They don't have cars.
Could you, I don't know, like amble into that countryside?
One could not just simply saunter into Mordor. One could not simply hijack the Eagles there. You can't do that.
So many restrictions on getting into Mordor.
Yeah.
So many restrictions.
It's like a secret club. They realize Frodo's the guy. Frodo volunteers. I will do this. I will bear this burden.
Shut up. Everyone, shut up. I'll do it.
They're like, not alone you won't. We're going to form what's called a group of people that will help you. That's why this is called Lord of the Rings, group of people that will help Frodo. You got, of course, Gandalf. You got the 4 hobbits. You got Frodo. You got his best friend, Sam, who works for him, I guess, as a gardener.
Best friend / employee.
A little bit of a weird.
You usually see.
A little bit of a power dynamic there. Merry and Pippin, 2 fuck-ups who helped them get there on the long way. Who's bow and arrow guy? Who's Zelda? Who's Link?
That's Legolas.
You got Gimli, the only one with any semblance of a personality. And you have a human they met along the way, Strider, Aragorn, Ranger, heir to the... Anyway, he's a dude. You've got another dude, Ned Stark. Is he Boromir or Faramir?
No, he's Boromir.
Boromir, okay. The Faramir comes later.
It's easy to remember because no one said Faramir in this entire movie, but you've taken that name away.
Well, it comes up later in the next
So just
movie.
remember the name that has been attributed to him is the name of that character.
Yeah,
the thing they keep yelling at him, that's his name. Not the name that was never said in the entire movie.
How could I possibly be confused? You're right. This is ridiculous.
You're right. It is hard to keep track of multiple characters. That's why I only watch Greek plays with a chorus of people that just tell me a story. I just can't keep up with all the names.
Look, I just didn't have enough time with these characters. I want, in these 30-minute sitcoms, I just don't have enough time. Okay.
And you lose 8 minutes to commercials.
That's your fellowship. They're on their way. They're
now
trucking.
You said, when you said you were going to spend more time on the prologue, I thought you were going to spend more time on the prologue, but we're actually still just we're at the halfway mark of the movie.
Well, the good news is it's like a snowball downhill.
It's like a roller coaster. That was the click, click, click at the top of the hill. I got it.
Because right now we have the ring, we're going to Mordor, and it's basically just like obstacle after obstacle. It's not really important to the recap, right? Because through various circumstances, they have to go through the dwarf mines of Moria.
Yep.
Which nobody wanted to do, but they had to. There's an avalanche. Christopher Lee opera sang Avalanchulus Maximus, and they had to go into Moria. It was fine until they dropped a bucket down a well. Then all the orcs came. There was a cave troll. And then eventually the real shit happened, which is the Balrog, which is a big mean devil from the center of the earth. Mm-hmm. Because the dwarves, who are definitely not an analog for any race of people, got too greedy. And they dug too
deep. With their Semitic language.
Yeah, don't worry about it. Definitely not any sort of...
And their diaspora. They don't have a homeland.
The big demon devil guy, the Balrog, is chasing after them now. You don't fuck with this guy. They're running. Eventually, they realize Gandalf realizes they're not going to get away unless I do the wizard you shall not pass thing. So
the thing you saw in the trailer.
He does that. Seems fine. Uh-oh. Whip crack went his whippy. Grabs Gandalf. Gandalf dead. Question mark. They're sad, but they keep going. They got to keep going.
Put an asterisk next to that dead thing.
Yeah.
If you go to the Dead Hall of Fame, you'll see they let Gandalf in, but there's like a weird asterisk there.
Yeah.
It's like, oh god, he used death-conquering drugs.
They didn't want to. They keep going, and then they confront the poop goblins. Poop goblins kill Ned Stark, and they take Merry and Pippin. Frodo realizes this is my cross to bear. I have to do this. It's just making it worse having other people around, I guess. So he leaves. Sam's not letting him go alone. It's going to be him. It's going to be Frodo and Sam going off to Mordor. The other people are just going to go save the hobbits because they can't help Frodo anymore. It's his journey now. Credits.
Absolutely perfect. I don't want to hear any complaints when you have to edit this episode down.
Listen, it's important that you understand what's going on.
It was like, I remember when I was trying to find ticket times back in 2001 for The Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring, and I called Movie Phone, which was a thing that young people may not remember.
Yeah.
And this is Movie Phone guy, he's like, in theaters now. The Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring. The good hobbit Frodo has to save the ring from the evil wizard Gandalf. And I was like, no, absolutely not. This is all wrong, Movie Phone guy.
Oh, such a short recap and not remotely.
So wrong in many ways.
If he had just said Sauron, it would have been like, yeah, that's close enough.
Yeah, I'll allow a wizard.
Yeah. Here's the thing about this, and I'm not gonna start complaining yet, but I'm just saying the reason that it took so long is because this movie is all plot.
Yes, it is not a character study of these people.
It is not get to know these characters so you care if they die. It is we got shit to do and only 3+ hours to do it. We got to get going.
All right. Well, do you want to complain about the length?
Absolutely, I do.
You would not like the book.
No, because it's longer. Because it takes more than 3 hours to read.
I mean, this is a fair. I mean, of the three movies, this is probably the most accurate of the adaptations.
Straight from the books. It seems
because
that way.
It gets a little. They start playing with start shuffling things around in the later ones.
Okay. It does seem like having not read the book, it does seem that way. Like it seems like he was like, I have to keep this because it's in the book. Like there was a lot of instances of that where it's like I understand. I'm sure there's a ton on the cutting room floor because there's a longer version out there. But like it's also like the squid, for example, the squid kraken monster in the pond. Like we didn't need that. We already had so many obstacles. You know what I mean? You could have. There were like plenty of points where you could have been like. It's not like they didn't have enough obstacles, and I understand that it's like it is part of a longer story, but it's also like I also appreciate part of the reason these are good to most people who are like fans of it is because it's a pretty faithful adaptation, right? Am I wrong about that?
Yeah, I mean, some of my notes are how it's pretty good in terms of an adaptation in what it does cut out and what one of the things like we talked about is that this is one of my first times watching the theatrical version over the extended edition that I usually watch.
Right.
And I think he does a good job of cutting out a lot of the stuff that's in the extended edition is really just for book fans to be happy with. None of it really pertains to the plot.
Right.
It's all just sort of a little winking nod. Well, not even winking nods, because those also get on my nerves. Like whenever I see a Marvel movie, I'm like, oh, that's obviously a reference to something. They're just little, a lot of the extended scenes are, showing what Galadriel gave to all the people in the company and things like that only book fans would really care about. You don't need to know that Gimli got 3 strands of hair from her. So that's one of the things I appreciated because it's sort of become ingrained to me how these movies play out. And I was like, oh yeah, this is completely different than how it plays out in the extended edition. I mean, there is a lot that is cut out of the books. Plot points, there are not a lot of things cut out.
Right.
But, the books are a lot more exposition heavy, a lot more, talking about the history of the ring and, oh, hey, Gandalf, where were you? Well, let me sit down and tell you everything that happened with me and Saruman. Yeah. And I think that overall, Peter Jackson did a really good job of cutting out stupid things like Tom Bombadil when the hobbits...
Right.
That's probably the most famous cut. It's they encounter a wood sprite named Tom Bombadil who speaks in rhymes, and he takes them to their house, and he, introduces them to his wife, and they just hang out there for a few days. And it's just like that was the moment I dropped the book when I was a teenager reading it for the first time. I'm like, oh, Jesus Christ.
I can't do this.
And later on in the book, it even negates having to talk to him at all because Gandalf's like, oh, if we gave the ring to Tom Bombadil, he'd forget where he put it. He doesn't care about that sort of crap. And it's like, great, this is pointless.
Why even bring it up then?
Why did we stop there? One of the things that does kind of annoy me, especially now that I've more recently read the books, is that Peter Jackson, and a lot of my quibbles with these movies are just that. They are like quibbles. And Peter Jackson like amps up, anytime there's an action beat in the book, Peter Jackson multiplies that by 10. So for example, the squid in the water, the watcher in the water, as it's called in the book. In the book, it grabs Frodo's leg and pulls him slowly into the lake. Aragorn cuts off the arm, and they run inside Mordor or Moria, and then the squid pulls down trees and rocks and stuff, meaning that they cannot get out.
They can't escape. The point is they can't get out.
Right. They can't just turn around. They have to go to the other side of the mountains. But in this, that becomes like this huge action sequence, with them fighting and water splashing everywhere and arms. You even see, like in the book, you never even see the thing. You just see his tentacle come out. Right. In this, he like comes out of the water and he's this giant squid thing, never to be explained or encountered again.
Right. And it still served the same purpose in that there's no escape, but it was just like an added.
But honestly, there's a part of me that also understands that if he didn't do those things, these movies probably wouldn't be that popular. Like if he like brought, Tolkien's literal like everyone sitting around in council's exposition about the history of the ring, no one will want to watch this crap. People want to watch, 50 orcs rather than 10 orcs kidnap Merry and Pippin and shoot like inch-wide arrows into Boromir. Yeah. So I recognize that is the irony of this, is that the stuff that I skim in the books are the action sequences, and that's really what Peter Jackson wants to get into.
I feel like that's natural from just the difference between a book and a movie, is that like it flips. Like an action scene in a book is like the worst thing to read, because you're like, oh, where was he standing? But as far as the last thing you want is just a story, unless it's a really compelling story, or you're going to basically do a flashback when they tell that story so you can see the action. It's like the exact opposite. You don't want you just want different things from the different medium, and that's understandable. But I guess I just want to get into immediately Elijah Wood being creepy, like immediately. Like we don't get a beat of him just like being a normal person. He immediately slow-mo weird smile looks at Gandalf and goes, Gandalf.
Wait, what are you talking? Where? In his first
in the
scene?
Shire, the first scene, he's like reading a book or something.
Right, and
like
he gets
turns
up and
around,
smiles.
And then immediately does the creepiest smile I've ever seen in my life. What's going on? Why are we immediately weird? Why did it get weird in slow-mo so quickly?
Yeah, there are a weird...
I'm not going to make you answer for every decision that Peter Jackson makes, by the way. I know, like, you're not responsible for that.
I mean, that one doesn't bother me as much, but yeah, there are a lot of weird moments. Some of them are just like dated choices of, when Frodo like gets stabbed by a Nazgul knife and he's like passing into whatever. And then he's brought to Elrond's house and there's like this weird, like all white superimposed stuff. It looks like an Enya video for a minute. I'm like, ooh, this doesn't age well. I mean, it's like 5 seconds long, but it's just like, oh, what is this? No, absolutely not. I do not want to buy the Time Life New Age soundtrack.
Yeah, we get it's like a elf bed foreshadowing, because he's like recovering. And then we get
like trauma associated with the elf bed and Return of the King. But yeah, you do. The other thing I did say, earlier that you would hate the book because you remarked that you feel like none of these characters are really delved into. You would hate the book because in comparison to the book, I feel like these characters are a lot more fleshed out in that. And some nerds would disagree with me on this, but I would say one of the choices that Peter Jackson makes that is a big change from the book is that he changes people's character like completely. In the book, Aragorn is very confident that he is the heir to Gondor and has no problems mentioning it to whoever asks, or doesn't ask. He is carrying Narsil, which is the broken sword that cut the hand off of Sauron. He's carrying it on his person. He'll be happy to show it to you the minute you meet him. Boromir sort of acquiesces to the fact that Aragorn is the heir of Gondor. There's no like tension between them like there is in this. The sort of acrimony between Legolas and Gimli is pretty much, by the time they're in Lothlorien, they're sort of being chummy with each other. I think Gimli by then is already referring to Legolas as a friend. There's a lot of choices that Peter Jackson makes that I think are all the better for it, because it does sort of flesh out these characters, at least for me, because in the book, I think I said this in The Hobbit, the episode we did on The Hobbit, where Tolkien is not the best character writer.
Right, right.
And so sometimes they just feel like a bunch of, white men who are very idealistic talking at each other. And that becomes more apparent in the Lord of the Rings when there's less comical characters.
Right.
And less characters like Thorin Oakenshield, who's a coward, and that's the point of his character. You have characters like Boromir and Aragorn who are just, they're iconographic characters rather than lived-in characters. One of the big changes, I think, from the book is that Gandalf actually seems like someone I'd want to be around. In the book, he's not mean, but he is a lot warmer in the movie version than he is in the book. He's very cold and removed, and it seems like he's got a lot on his mind. And grumpy. He's a fucking grump.
He's more like a stern grandpa in this one, where it's like they do a lot of work in that beginning scene of him like shooting off fireworks and being cute with the little hobbits. Like part of he's not just like an angry wizard with the weight of the world on his shoulders.
I mean, when he calls Pippin a fool of a toque, when Pippin drops that skeleton into a well, in the book it's a rock, that's pretty much Gandalf from the book, is like calling people idiots and like being burdened with having to have a bunch of morons around him all the time.
This is sort of a bit of a fantasy trope, and probably partially because of Tolkien, but like the character traits are more from the individual's race. You're a dwarf, so you're like stubborn and tough. You're an elf, so you're graceful and quiet, or you know what I mean? Yeah, and your very good skincare routine seems to be working. It's because you are an X, you are YZ. That's not really super compelling. Like you can't lay that all at the feet of this movie because it's like it is of that tradition, but it's a little bit moving when Boromir dies, but I also don't know this guy. Like, even though we've been with him for 30 minutes at this point, like I don't know much about him other than he was reticent to, believe that Aragorn was the heir, and then eventually he comes around and he does like kind of struggle with the ring. I know a few things. It's not a big impact when he dies.
I don't know. I mean, I found his death in the movie a lot more moving than I find his death in the book. In the book, he seems real cagey the entire time, and I think in this, just it's kind of like Gandalf, he's a lot warmer. He gets a lot of cute moments, like when he's training Pippin and Merry in sword fighting when they're debating what they're going to do. He gets a cute moment with them. He has a sort of somber moment with Aragorn where they're talking about Gondor. I think it's harder to tell because, a lot of times they're talking about a country that in the trilogy we have not seen yet. We had a scene in there, but you don't know that that's where they're talking about. You see Gandalf go to Minas Tirith in Gondor in the early part of the movie, but the movie doesn't make a mention that that's what that's
about. The White City that he went to. Okay.
That they're talking about.
Okay.
So maybe it works better for me as a book reader because I just know what they're talking about, so it affects me more. But I think that Boromir does a good job. I think, in my opinion, at least,
the acting is good. You don't get me wrong.
Yeah, I was going to say the acting is really good. I think it's sort of that original Star Wars trilogy type of thing of like you can write this shit, but you can't say it.
I think they did what they
and I think they did a really good job of like they pulled a Harrison Ford and were able to say some of this stuff because some of this stuff is pulled whole cloth from the book and it shows. It's a little bit like dated. I mean, it also has that sort of floral fantasy language where everyone's just like looking dreamily off into the distance and talking in ways that no one would ever talk. I think they did a good job of like casting the right people for some of these roles. I don't know if there's really a weak person in the cast, at least in the main cast, that I can think of.
I think most of my quibbles, I don't necessarily like the way that Frodo is played, that Sam is played. Like, it's a little bit, it's just weird. It's not like weird that they...
You mean them together or just their performances?
Their performances. Like, it's not, and I don't think it's like Sean Astin did a bad job or Elijah Wood did a bad job. It's just like, it's just weird. And I think it's maybe more of a directorial choice, like the slow-mos and the long looks. And it's like, and if that means they're in love with each other, that's not even what I'm arguing with. It's just like, why is this so weird? Like, if they're in love with each other, let's do it. Let's do this.
Wait, what do you mean? I guess I don't I like Sean Astin's performance. I'm a little here and there on Elijah Wood's performance, honestly.
Yeah.
But what is it? What's the weird aspect?
Just the
longing looks and
yeah,
stuff.
the way it's shot, the music, it's all very like it's shot like a cheesy romance between these two friends. And like I said, it's not necessarily like a homophobia thing where I'm like, no, that can't be it. But it's also like, are we doing that? Or what are we doing here?
You want
like,
them to go to Pound Town, is what you're saying.
Well, I mean, is this like a romance story between those two, or is it just that it's shot like one and they're good and they're friends, and he's just trying to show the depth of Sam's like dedication to this cause?
I would say, yeah, I think that's
to his employer. He's being paid. Let's be honest.
Is this time and a half, or
yeah? Is
do I need to turn in my hours at the end of the quest, or should I be doing that weekly?
Still doing your gardening when we get back,
or is this no? It's the same. It's the same level. This
same
is
rate.
Just a
same rate.
Side project.
Okay. Sure. Yeah.
Am I going to get like a 1099, or are you doing a W-2?
Under the table. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
I think it's yeah. I mean, there's plenty of gay jokes that have been made about Frodo and Sam. For example, when I was reading the books as a teenager, yeah, I think it's the dedication is like he has. At least in this movie, they really play up. I have made a promise to Gandalf that I'm going to do this, so I can't let you out of my sight. I feel uncomfortable if you're away from me. I promised him that I would follow you to the end.
Yeah. Do you?
Even when Gandalf is dead, fell down a pit.
Can you give me some Saruman history? What is this guy's deal? So all I know is that Gandalf shows up to Saruman for help.
Yeah.
To be like, what's going on here with this ring? And it turns out Saruman's evil. Saruman calls him a burnout, says he's been smoking too much of the hobbit weed, and then they have a hilarious wizard fight, and then Gandalf's at the top of the tower. I like the action in this is pretty good. The wizard fight was hilarious.
The wizard fight is so ridiculous.
I don't know how else you would do that.
By the way,
I don't know. Yeah,
this is not something from the book.
Okay.
They do not trade fisticuffs or spin around like Curly on the floor of Orthanc.
Breakdancing. Full-on breakdancing.
I mean, I'm not as well versed with the wizards, but I can sort of give you a rundown. Is like the wizards are essentially demigods or like an archangel type creature. They are like eternal creatures from the pantheon of Middle-earth who were sent down to specifically battle Sauron. And in the Second Age, which is the end of the Second Age is the battle you see in the prologue. Like that is the culmination of like, we have defeated Sauron, good for us. And Saruman was sort of like, he was sent to sort of lead those efforts, like not in battle, but like sort of be the counterpoint to Sauron. Like he is the head of the good free races of Middle-earth. And Gandalf had a role as sort of an advisory role. Like he would go to kings and, you know, heads of state and diplomats, I don't know, and you know, advise them on how they should be acting and counteracting. And once the immediate threat of Sauron had gone, Saruman, the wizard, sort of sets up in Orthanc, I believe. And he is investigating. Orthanc is Isildur, or Isengard, the big black tower that he lives in. Okay. And he essentially is researching where is the ring. And he's doing this in good faith. Like he is trying to find the ring so it can be destroyed. And I think the implication that Tolkien is getting at is because he was sort of separated from the peoples of Middle-earth, doing research and academic searching for the ring. Nerd shit, he sort of turned inward on himself. Started creating a lust for power in himself. Whereas Gandalf still remains like out in the world.
He's a blue-collar wizard.
Right, exactly.
He's not up his own ass like those Ivy League wizards.
Yeah. He's out here with you coal miners, fighting for things. Please ignore my lineage. I'm just one of you guys. Please ignore the fact that I've been alive for 6,000 years.
I'll be right back. I'm just going to give Sauron another tax cut.
So, I mean, I'm sure there's plenty of Tolkien nerds listening right now that's like, oh, that's wrong, and that's wrong, and that's wrong. But that's how
that is super helpful. Yeah, that does make a lot of sense. And
so that's why his betrayal it's not just like he's some rando who like joined league with Saruman. He's literally doing the exact opposite of what he was sent by the gods to do.
Right. Okay. That makes a lot of sense.
And I love Christopher Lee in this, by the way. I mean, Peter Jackson is like a horror nerd, and you see that a lot, and especially the Nazgul stuff. So the fact that he was also able to hire Christopher Lee, who is also a Tolkien nerd, is amazing. And then like Christopher Lee has kind of that Jack Nicholson vibe where it's like, well, that guy's evil.
Right.
Why would we ever think that this man is anything less than in league with the enemy? But he's really great in that role.
He kind of
leans his Lee press-on nails.
Yeah, he kind of leans into the cheese in a way that I liked, because he's like, got the big booming operatic, and so when he's doing his like incantations later, it's like, and I'm like, what is happening? I don't know what's happening.
Your love of the halfling's leaf has surely slowed your
You fucking burnout, Gandalf. You fucking.
Oh, you're hanging out. You graduated 10 years ago. You're still hanging out in this college town. Get out of here.
All right. Ring wraiths are legit scary.
Oh, absolutely. When I read The Hobbit, and then I immediately started reading Lord of the Rings, and I was like, ooh, I don't like this. This is scary, and I don't care for this.
I thought the Nazgul, they did a great job. When they like first encounter one and they're just hiding under the tree roots, and then like it puts its hands down, and then all of a sudden bugs are just crawling out just because he's just like the epitome of death, and he's got an evil horse. Of course he's got an evil horse.
And it's been shoed improperly. I'm not even like a horse guy, but that doesn't look like
bleeding.
It's good for the horse. There's
even an evil horse just needs normal shoes.
Oh, Jesus. Yeah, that is a really effective scene. I will say it's almost shot for shot or ripped off from the Ralph Bashki animated version from the 70s.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. There are a few shots in this where I'm like, I'm going to say that's an homage.
Right. Yeah.
That. Like when the old hobbit at Bilbo's birthday screams proud feet, and his feet are like right in front of that's also like ripped straight up, like same line, same everything from the Ralph Bakshi version. Yeah. But the addition of the bugs of being like, whenever in a movie bugs are like, oh shit, we got to get out of here. That's like, oh, we can't. No, absolutely not. There are no mosquitoes in Mordor, but that's not a selling point.
Speaking of the Hobbit, we also get the trolls that were turned to stone in the Hobbit.
Oh yeah,
we're like hanging out by them. I was like, I remember those guys.
I remember being annoyed the first time I saw the movie. I was like, are we not going to address the stone trolls that are just behind everyone? It is in the extended edition. Sam says, look, Mr. Bilbo's trolls. But during the movie, I was like, we're just not going to address it. There's just these giant stone trolls behind you, and no one's.
I kind of liked it. You would assume that they're statues. Like if we encountered those, we'd be like, well, these are cool statues. And we are busy doing other shit right now. We don't need to.
My friend's dying, so maybe I don't want to talk about the fact that these stone trolls are here.
But if you're paying attention, you get a little.
You notice that the Wayne Corporation logo is on the trolls, so you know that Batman also exists in this universe, and he's probably going to come up in a later movie.
Batman.
Never enjoy the movie you're watching. Always think about the movie you will be watching 2 years from now.
That's called synergy.
God damn it! I was hoping you would have more. I want more questions. I like answering questions.
Okay. Tell me about the poop monsters. Tell me about the poop orcs.
Which are the poop? Oh yeah, the Uruk-hai.
Sure.
Yeah, the ones that come out of the weird egg sacs.
Yeah.
So those are.
It's more like a condom in which illicit drugs have been brought across the border from the butt.
Are you storing Uruk-hai? No.
No. Why would you?
I imagine his butt is the size of an Uruk-hai. There's like a 6-foot bump in his butt. That's more of a visual joke. So those are Uruk-hai. They are bred. I don't think the movies make a big deal out of this, but orcs are not very tall. Probably like a little bit taller than dwarves, but they're sort of like hunched down. They don't particularly care for the sun.
Yeah.
So they're not very effective if you need a multi-day hunt for 9 people in the woods. So Sauron breeds them as like a cross between men and orcs, and so they are taller and like broader shouldered and can run in the sun. I want to suck up the sun. Extended edition, that scene where they just have they're sitting on a log. There's an acoustic guitar. It's
music
great.
video. Yeah. They also need a lot of trees for some reason. Is this just the fire?
Tyler,
I'm sure that
onto that.
I'm sure that won't come into play later.
Yeah, he rips up. Saruman rips up all the trees in Isengard to feed his forges, so he can make a bunch of knives and shit.
That was very much like, why are we talking? Why did we spend 15 precious seconds talking about these trees? It wasn't a lot of time, but
This movie could have been 3 hours, 20 minutes, and 14 seconds, but now because of you, it's 20. Wait, I can't do the math. I picked a wrong
Don't worry
number.
about it.
29 seconds longer. Fuck you.
It wasn't obviously a time, because it's not like they spent a whole scene talking about it. They did mention it though, and it was weird because it was like, oh, right, because the trees later. Like, that's immediately like, why did he say that? And I wasn't even like trying to find shit to pick on. I was just like,
trees are strong, my lord.
yeah, pull them harder. Like, what?
Yeah, that comes into play in the Two Towers.
Right.
Gotta feed those forges. I will say, this version, Peter Jackson does make another change in this. The forges reminded me of the fact that orcs in the books all carry scimitars.
Okay.
Rather than these sort of like geometric, like easy to recreate like swords. There's a lot of othering and maybe some coded racism in the Lord of the Rings.
No, you don't say.
I do say.
In fantasy?
But yeah, that's one of the things that rereading it, I was like, oh, he's really making a point of saying that they have scimitars, isn't he?
And we also get Tolkien's well-known affinity for 80s music videos when Arwen appears. Because the whole thing is like a White Snake video. Like, what is what is Arwen's deal? While I'm asking questions.
The hood of a car.
Yeah, it was weird that she was. I thought it was going to be Liv Tyler, but it turned out to be Tawny Kitaen. It was weird.
One of her best roles, though, if I'm being honest. Surreal Life, Lord of the Rings. So Arwen's deal, I will be honest, the first time I read The Lord of the Rings, I didn't notice there was a character named Arwen. She's sort of in the background of many scenes, and then later you find out she marries Aragorn, 1,000 pages later, and you're like, her? Who is she? So, but in this, her role is beefed up because it's just, a sausage party. We don't need the character Glorfindel to be fleshed out from the book. Just replace him with Arwen, and then you get to introduce Arwen even earlier.
So that was a different character? And
yeah, there was just like a random elf, from Rivendell comes and encounters them. His name is Glorfindel. He hangs out in Rivendell, and that's where he stays for the rest of the trilogy. So they beefed up Arwen's story a lot more. Not that it's like completely invented whole cloth. There's a whole appendix.
Thank God.
About Aragorn and Arwen's love story from the books. So they just sort of inject that into the movie, which is another thing where I'm like, if you had cut this out, these movies probably wouldn't be as popular with as many people.
Sure.
Although there is a moment whenever I watch the movie where my eyes just sort of glaze over, where it's just like two beautiful people just talking breathily at each other. And Liv Tyler's contacts, and everyone with colored contacts in this movie, they are terrible. Colored contacts are always terrible. If you've ever thought about buying them, don't. They look weird. They're unsettling to everyone. If movies can't make them look good, you sure as hell look weird in them. Stop it, stop it, stop it. The Lord has cursed you with terrible eyes, and you'll have to deal with it.
Enjoy your specs. Yeah, it felt that whole it's not a love scene, but them like whispering to each other in Elvish, it felt very unearned. Like, it was very like, what? Like, I understand like it's kind of an introduction to her and that they have some sort of previous relationship, and then obviously it'll put that letter, but it just felt like, what are we doing here? And
honestly, I've seen these movies 100 times. I still don't understand what's going on. She gives him a necklace. It like becomes a metaphor for her mortality.
Yeah.
But I'm just like,
she's going to give it up for him.
There's also like a vision of her living forever later on in another movie, possibly in an extended scene. But it's just like, is she dying or is she living? It's always very vague, and I'm always very confused about it, but I'm not interested enough to actually look into it.
I feel like it was just not interesting. I feel like they explained it okay. It was just, I was already bored. It's like she's willing to give up her immortality to be with him, basically.
Right, exactly. And I think that's the gist you need to know.
Yeah,
is that
that's what you get out of it.
Elves naturally live forever, and she is opting to not go to the elf islands over there. She'll stay here with him because she loves him so much.
AKA where white people go.
I was trying to think of, some elves of color, and sort of drawing a blank here. One of the things I will say, this is probably the first. I said in the introduction that I sort of followed this, like the pre-production, and one of the controversies in pre-production is they were going to beef up Arwen's character, and one of the things, and we can talk about this maybe in the second movie, is that they were going to have her actually physically be there in the Helm's Deep scenes in the second movie and fight alongside Aragorn, once again giving them more screen time together and establish their story. And fans flipped the fuck out. It's probably my first introduction to what is now the monoculture of toxic fans.
Right.
And they sort of, I don't know if they just decided on their own, like, this isn't working, but I mean, they sort of just fell back and all of Arwen's scenes were cut from... Well, not all of her scenes were cut. They added this weird love story across the expanse of the mind or some bullshit. But she's cut out of the Helm's Deep stuff. So Arwen is she gets beefed up a lot, but she's not as big a role as they had originally intended for whatever reason.
I'll tell you what, Rivendell looks pretty tight.
Rivendell does look pretty tight. Hope it doesn't get hot there, though, because, I mean, as a sweater, I mean, I'd immediately be ruined in the summertime.
It's very humid.
You don't have any windows. It's all just open air, and there's a fucking tree in my bedroom.
It's like when you go into that Rivendell airport, they don't even have walls at the airport, man. You just go right off the plane, and you're just like, oh, I'm on vacation.
Which TSA has been begging for at least one wall, but Elrond is like, absolutely not. Although, now that I'm thinking about it, remember when we lived together and we had that side porch that was just like had a pergola above it? And it was just like every season had a new bunch of shit falling through the pergola, and you absolutely hated it. You'd fucking hate Rivendell.
Yeah, I think I might.
In the spring, it'd be floral petals. In the summer, it would just be sticks and branches and bug shit. In the fall, it'd be leaves. In the winter, it'd be snow. What do they do in the winter?
Just every single day.
Everyone's huddled in Elrond's library. Just
like, people just like all have push brooms in their little chambers because just
gotta get these fucking leaves out of here. And the walnuts fall in, they stain the carpet.
And they scare the shit out of you when they fall on the roof. Oh, God.
That was right on my pillow. If my head had been over there, my skull would be crushed.
I feel like I'm driving the episode with my questions, but do you have things you need to get to?
One of the things, I mean, this is all out of order. I should have mentioned this when we were talking about Frodo, but one of the weird things that's always bothered me is that in the extended edition, this isn't the case, but in the theatrical edition, Frodo and Bilbo do not share screen time until they meet up in Rivendell again. Like, there is no scene with them together. I mean, they're definitely in scenes together, but they never are, like, talking to each other in a scene. Although with maybe the exception of the dragon firework, now that I'm thinking
because he goes to save him when the...
But that's it. Like, that, there's no, like, sweet moment of, like, you're my nephew and I love you or whatever. It's just, like, they're constantly talking about each other, but they're never, like, aside from that few seconds on screen together. I always found that very odd to me.
Yeah, I guess I didn't notice because I thought they talked in the beginning, but you might be right. They are in a scene but don't actually talk to each other.
Yeah. I also want to point out that Frodo or Bilbo, maybe Frodo just didn't redecorate after Bilbo left, but Frodo, like my mother, collects pine cones and puts them as decoration in the house.
Normal
so there you go, Phyllis. You can just move right into Hobbiton. I want to talk about Peter Jackson's literalism with Tolkien's more purple prose in the books. There are a few moments that make me laugh. The first time when I saw this movie, when Galadriel goes off the chain.
Yeah, when she does that and Bilbo does that, both the times are fucking weird.
What? And it's not like it's not... Those scenes are in the book. Like, there is a line where, Bilbo sees the ring and, there's like just a passing line of, and were someone to watch, they'd see a face not unlike Gollum flash over Bilbo's facade or something like that. But he doesn't like turn into a scary monster.
Yeah.
And Galadriel has that sort of same speech, but at least from my interpretation, I never interpreted her having like a meth-fueled fantasy. Like that was never my imagination, that she just flips out. It makes her seem
That's Blanchett,
insane.
right?
Yeah, Kate Blanchett's character. It makes her seem insane. And she's supposed to be this sort of warm character that's like sort of giving them respite, and it makes them seem like they're trapped in a house with a violently insane individual.
Yeah, this sort of actually was one of my questions too, because in the Hobbit, wood elves are fucking bonkers. Once again, wood elves are fucking bonkers. Because isn't she a wood elf? Because it's like, we are elves, but we're not the same as those other elves. We're the weird ones.
I mean, I don't know what strain of elf they are attached to, but they are very close to where Thranduil from The Hobbit, the elf king from The Hobbit, lives.
Okay.
The best explanation I've ever heard, and this is sort of I've taken to heart, is like you should think of Elrond as sort of like the intellectual center of elvendom.
Okay.
Galadriel, Cate Blanchett, as the spiritual center of elvendom.
Okay.
And Thranduil is sort of like the military center of elvendom. So he
wasn't in this movie though.
No, he does not appear in this movie. He doesn't appear until the Hobbit quadrilogy, the quintilogy. Every time I mention it, it gets added another 3 on. But yeah, it's one of those scenes for me where I'm like, I like this movie, and that is a bad scene in this movie I like. It's just like the absolute wrong choice. And I think they're just trying to point out like everyone has a struggle with the ring. I mean, I think that's one of their big things is like they just want to show that everyone who encounters the ring struggles with it. Even characters who don't struggle with it in the book, like Aragorn and later Faramir, in the movies, they struggle with being tempted by the ring.
Right.
And I don't know, it's a scene that's supposed to be powerful, and it makes me laugh whenever I see it. I remember my friend Joseph, who I've mentioned on our Dante's Peak episode, he could not stop laughing in the theater because he was so ridiculous to him that she was reacting this way.
It was weird. I feel like the Bilbo one is effective though, because it's more of a jump scare. And even if it is metaphorical, like even if it's like, did his face really do that? Like it doesn't matter, because the point is like, it makes more sense with Bilbo too, because he's like spent all these years with the ring, and so it's clearly affected him more than he sort of let on. So I don't know, it kind of like makes him leaving the ring behind all the more powerful, because you can tell that how much it's affected him and that he needs to fucking go to the land beyond or whatever he does later.
I definitely give it much more of a pass because it's like a split second, and it's obviously intended to be sort of a silly jump scare type moment. Right. Not that it's not without meaning, but it is supposed to be, ooh, gotcha.
Whereas Blanchett is like,
in
it's a
my
wind
place, you shall have a queen. Just completely, it looks like she's about to do a DJ set. Like, I don't know what's going on.
And Elijah Wood's like, not you. I'll do the DJ in here.
You know what? I just realized that my friends are back there, and I was supposed to do the wake up call this time. So, Gally, it's been fun. I gotta head out. Love the mirror. Love the whole thing. Gotta run.
Love your whole thing. You've got so okay.
Love a forest I can be barefoot in, much like you. Big barefoot proponent. Gotta go.
Let's talk about the ring just a little bit more.
Yes. How it talks?
It talks? I mean, that's the voice of Sauron, right? So it's like what is the thing in Harry Potter? It's like a Horcrux. It's a piece of Sauron, sort of. Like,
I think
his spirit lives within it, basically.
I don't know how implicit that is in the books, but yeah, in this, it is definitely essentially a Horcrux. Part of Sauron lives on, and Sauron will always live on as long as that ring continues to be around. And theoretically, the reason that Galadriel and Gandalf sort of respond so strongly with it is because if you have some semblance of power, magic power or innate, power of like a Maiar spirit like Gandalf or Saruman, you could wield that ring much like Sauron can.
Right.
You would probably try and do good with it, and eventually it would always be corrupted through the inherent evil of the ring.
Right.
So that's why there's always like this push-pull with more powerful characters being like, absolutely not, get it away from me.
The thing that imbues you with this extra power is in itself evil. So that is an interesting sort of twist on it. Is it like the idea? I still have a hard time with like a ring being like semi-sentient, but just as like not believing it in this world, but just like it not being stupid. But it makes a lot more sense. Like, and I think I semi-remember that, but they did actually a pretty good job of like reminding you over and over again that like, no, this ring wants to leave Frodo. It wants the ring wraiths to find them and then bring it back to Sauron. Like, it has a will of its own, and thus, like, all these sort of weird things and all these people, like, being corrupted by it, which gets a little old even in the first movie. It makes sense. Like, they're just trying to reiterate, like, how powerful this is, and it's getting more powerful as Sauron gains strength. Like, that makes sense. What is, though...
Oh, wait, hold on. Before we get away from the ring, I just wanted to say, I think in the book it's a little less sentient.
Right. Like, it literally bounces on its own.
I think that's another metaphorical choice that was made. And I think overall it is fairly effective. I can also imagine it gets a little old.
Yeah.
But I think it overall is effective in just giving the ring a lot more of a foreboding feeling than an otherwise inanimate piece of jewelry can do on its own.
Yeah, and they do a better job than I remembered of explaining why it doesn't really have, when Bilbo first finds it, he's like, oh, cool, a ring. And then, like, puts it on, he's invisible and takes it off. Like, why is it then not a big deal? And first of all, I was like, because all this hadn't been written yet. But also, like, he retconned it, whatever. Well, Sauron was regaining his power, and Gollum spent hundreds of years with it, and it drove him. Like, they explain it. I feel like in a satisfactory way for a fantasy movie. You're like, this is why, and you're like, oh, okay.
I think,
but can it teleport him? This is what I wanted to ask, because like the last time, or I don't know if it's the last time, but when the poop goblins are after them, Frodo puts the ring on, and eventually, like, when he takes it back off, it like dumps him on the top of a hill, which he wasn't before. Like, so it doesn't just make him invisible; he just like teleports.
No, he. It's hard to tell because they do this ring effect that kind of gets on my nerves, where everything's sort of not just in the book. It's described as like your surroundings feel blurry, almost like you've like taken off your glasses or something. But in the movies, it's like everything is somehow got like a fire effect through Photoshop, applied to it, and it's also really, it's like you're underneath an airport. Everything is just like. So it can feel like he teleported there, but he actually, when he's running from Boromir, he does crawl up to this little seat that's on top of this platform that I could get into the history of, but it's not important. He puts on that ring, and this is actually in the book. I double checked because it was really odd to me that he does essentially have a vision, essentially, of, let me say essentially one more time. He essentially has a villain, essentially, where he sees Barad-dûr, which is Sauron's tower, and Sauron sees him, and then he freaks out. I do want to address that as well. He takes off the ring, and he falls off that platform and lands on top of the hill.
Okay. All right.
It's hard to tell because like there is like this weird fire effect, but he is like sort of on his way away from Boromir. He does crawl up to this weird little structure.
By that, it doesn't matter, but it just made me be like, oh, is this a new thing that I didn't remember?
Notes here say the ring effect, and then I actually drew an eye rolling emoji.
Okay, I just have one more thing. So,
God, okay, a question or just want to talk?
No, I want to
talk.
I want to do quotes. I actually use.
Yes, please.
I actually have more quotes from this movie that I use in everyday life that I didn't realize were from this movie.
Yep, lay it on me.
All right, then, keep your secrets.
That's something you use every day.
I mean, maybe not every day, but I've used that and didn't realize. And of course, keep it secret, keep it safe. It's quite cool.
I love that.
I thought I was quoting Sean Connery for some reason, and so I'd always be like, "It's quite cool."
I like that line because he says that, but he is literally holding it with fireplace tongs. He's like, "Oh, it's quite cool." I'm like, "You just pulled a ring out of a fire, and you aren't touching it, Dick."
It's not unreasonable that I would think that it was hot.
Oh, no, trust me. I have no way of saying this confidently, but it's quite cool.
It's quite cool.
It tells me it's quite cool. Miss Manny Penny.
Of course, there's like, one does not simply walk into, that's more of a meme.
That was the first time I was aware of what a meme was.
Yes. Yeah.
It's like, I keep seeing this. What is this? Why do people keep saying one does not quite simply do a simple thing? And I keep using this Sean Bean picture. What's that?
What is that?
What is that?
I have no
memory. A meme. Huh. Thanks, Richard Dawkins, for coining that 30 years prior.
I have no memory of this place.
That is very effective for me when I am texting my brother, because my brother has a very spotty memory from rampant drug use in his life. So oftentimes we have a gif of Gandalf looking back and forth and going, I have no memory of this place. That we like to send back and forth.
I wouldn't say that I've used this one, but I would like to, and that is, what is this new devilry?
That is actually one I do use when I am uncomfortable or anxious about a change to a very simple plan.
Oh, we're going for drinks and then desserts now? What is this new devilry? Although that does kind of sound like a nightmare now, but for different reasons. And then, of course, the quote I use most often and probably every day, which is, I see you. I see you. Because you're an eye. Because you're an eye.
Because he's an eye.
Because you're a giant cat's eye.
I can't think of anything more undercutting of your main antagonist than to have him say, I see you, like you're fucking playing hide and go seek. I like to pretend he doesn't say it because it is so, first off, you have the ring fire effect.
Yeah.
Maybe he didn't say it. Maybe that's something I'm, putting on it.
You're doing like
line in Aladdin where, he's whispering something. It might be dirty, but who knows? I'm just going to pretend to ignore it. I see you. Added to, could be anything.
He's doing like Chopper 7 weather. He's like,
Sauron, you didn't come quite in. What's going on I-65? One other thing that I was confused, there is the quick scene when Gandalf is doing his research. And by the way, I like his commitment to research. I like that Peter Jackson was like, we're making a 3-hour scene, but we're not cutting Gandalf doing his research into the ring.
We got to get this microfiche scene in.
He's over there with Clarice Starling looking up microfiche in the FBI headquarters. But he goes to Gondor. And this is when he is still trying to figure out if this is just some random magic ring or if this is the one ring that he literally was sent from heaven to try and stop. And Gondor, of course, is right on the border of Mordor. And he looks over at Mordor and it's literally glowing red and there's storm clouds everywhere. And he's like, I'm going to still have to look into this further. I'm like, it's literally the surface of Mars over there. I feel like that's answered all your questions. That goes back to Peter Jackson's literalism. Again, I mean, it doesn't bother me that much, but it's still like, okay, I mean, there's a land that's on fire that previously wasn't in history. Yeah. Maybe the Dark Lord's back. I see you. I just saw that in my notes. Oh, the stairs. The stairs out of Moria are so...
stairs.
So when they're running from the Balrog, and there's a little gap in the stairs, and then everyone's jumping, and
they gotta
there's
do
this 350-ton stairway giving way, but the combined 220 pounds of a hobbit and a man, just sort of leaning forward does it. It's one of those things like I buy into the first time I see it, but every time I see it since the spell is broken more and more. I'm like, what is this? Get on with it. Let's get to the Balrog already.
Yeah, that didn't bother me. Just because it was like in a action scene.
Right.
I mean, if you were like, I'm going to cut this, I'd be like, yeah, that's fine.
Fine by me. I talked about Boromir's death. Sam and Frodo's goodbye for me always gets me when he's like running after. I don't mean to. Well, not even that. Frodo, like, rowing the boat away, pretending to not hear Sam. It's a very Harry and the Hendersons moment. Get out of here. No one wants you. I don't know.
You can't swim, Sam.
Sam! I also like Sam saying, or Frodo says, I have to go to Mordor alone. And Sam's like, I know, and I'm coming with you. It's very sweet to me. That's not what alone means. This is a simple word. I'm going to nominate someone for my Catherine O'Hara MVP award.
Okay.
Sorry, Catherine O'Hara Memorial MVP award. Uh-huh. And my nominee is Billy Boyd as Pippin, Peregrine Took. Second breakfast connoisseur, thinks that apples fall from the sky, almost landed in horse shit and says, ooh, that was close.
Is that you all everybody from Lost or the other guy?
The other guy.
Okay, yeah. I like both of them. But I will support your nomination. I second it.
Thank you. But do we have a quorum?
Gimli, I think, is my favorite comic relief in this movie.
He is. That was another one of those changes that I think bothered me as a nerd initially, that he sort of gets cut down to comic relief in this.
Yeah.
But the more I see the movie, like as a whole in the movie, like it very much works that like Gimli sort of, at least just in this movie, is a comic relief character. It works really well.
Because that's essentially the purpose of those, of the two other hobbits, of Merry and Pippin as well, is they're like the kind of plucky comic relief, and then he's the comic relief, and then it's like you could have like a Moana situation where there's like, how many sidekicks, funny sidekicks do we have?
You got a fucking
there's a pig. There's a
pig. There's eventually like a giant crab man.
P.S. Moana is great, but still, like it's just like, I mean, of course, as a comedy fan, it's not a comedy. You know what I mean? Like it's not like I'm not expecting them, but I think they did a good job of those guys not like trying to yuck it up too much, like, or compete for most comic relief. But I feel like probably all three of those characters equally. My other
nominee, but I don't think he falls in under the rubric that we typically use for our Catherine O'Hara Memorial MVP Award, but it was also going to be Ian McKellen as Gandalf, who I think when I was rereading the books, I realized that I sort of cast it with like either how I always imagined them. Like sometimes I have the animated versions from the Ralph Bashki version sometimes pop in my head. But every time it's always Ian McKellen as Gandalf has replaced my book version of Gandalf. Like he is playing Gandalf in my version, which makes him seem a lot ruder in the book. I think he's just great. I love Ian McKellen so much, and I think this was the movie that made me fall in love with him.
Yeah.
I think he does a good job of taking a character that could have easily felt like really otherworldly and makes him into a quintessential character. Like everyone loves Gandalf now. Everyone loves Gandalf.
Yeah, and I mean, like comparing, we just watched the cartoon Hobbit, comparing that characterization to Ian McKellen's, it's warmer. It's still kind of a weird character, like as I'm sure written in the book, and as you said, it's like even weirder in the book a little bit, like a little harsher. I think it just is a strange, otherworldly character, but he brings like warmth and a strength to it. It is still a little bit like, I think it's more later that I was confused initially, because you're like, what is his deal? But like in this, it's pretty clear what his deal is. You know what I mean? Like he's powerful, but he's not all powerful.
Are you referring to his promotion to third key of wizards?
Yes, when he changes outfits and gains the confidence that he needs.
It's a shopping montage scene. You just don't get the shopping montage.
That's my favorite part.
He comes in with his Manolo Blahniks, and he feels like the belle of the ball.
Are you ready to go to the verdict, or do you have more?
Oh, absolutely.
Do you want to start, Damon Xanthopoulos?
This movie's great. I mean, it's certainly a long movie, but I think at this point, that's the cliche of the Lord of the Rings movies. You fucking know what you're getting into.
Yeah.
The funny thing, we were talking during one of our meetings at work this week, coincidentally, Lord of the Rings came up, and one woman was saying, I bought those movies. This whole thing is rife with problems, but she was like, I bought those movies never having seen them, and I promised myself I was going to watch them, and every time I start them, I fall asleep. A younger me would be like, you've got to watch them. But older me is like, then don't watch them. Why are you buying movies you haven't seen? Who's buying things like that? But another guy on our staff was like, oh, you have to watch the extended editions. I'm like, rewatching them now, the theatrical.
No, you do not.
She doesn't. She doesn't need to know what Galadriel gave Legolas at their parting from Lothlorien. She doesn't need that. Just watch the 3-hour edition versus the 4-hour edition. Or don't watch it if you don't want to watch it. You don't have to watch anything. That being said, your inner child is not an idiot. I love this movie.
There's some like frustrating directorial choices, and I think they are mostly directorial choices, despite the fact that even though this is obviously Peter Jackson's magnum opus, like there are some like every scene is like an SNL sketch, and that it's like a little bit too long. And some of that I think is maybe like a tribute to a bygone era, because that's how I feel about a lot of older films, and I don't think that's totally fair. You know what I mean? I even feeling that when I'm watching it, and when I watch older films, I go like, well, we're just staying on that. We're just staying in that shot, are we? And obviously that's not. It's just movies were made in a different way. And I think some of that is maybe him just like making an homage to different movies, but also some of it's just like, I'm sure, and we know this from the even longer extended editions, that he wanted to put so much in it. He wanted to be true to the books, and at least in terms of spirit, and he already felt probably like he cut so much to get them down this much. But it's like, there is a lot that you could still cut from this. And I'm not saying like every movie has to be 90 minutes long or some shit like that, but it's not that it's 3 hours long, it's that it feels long in parts. Like the Aragorn scene, and like just some extra things where it's just like, we could cut several minutes off of almost every scene, and I think it would still work. And that gets frustrating after a while. And I'm even like into it, and I'm just like, okay, let's go here. Having said all that, Your Inner Child is not an idiot. I think it's good. I think you're right about your coworker. I think that's a really good. When something's this kind of culturally significant, or even film technologically significant, there's this sort of like, it's like a homework movie. Like you feel like you have to, or because all your friends or whatever. And I'm glad that's passed, because if you enjoy this, which I do, then you're gonna like the next one and the next one, and you're going to enjoy like reading about how they filmed this, and then the extra scenes, and you know what I mean? You're going to nerd into it, and then that's great. And you don't have to be mad about it. You don't have to be mad about other people not liking it either.
Right.
Which is so funny for us to say, as like our podcast is titled like, our opinion is right and you're an idiot if you disagree with us. But like, the truth is, there's a weight of nostalgia that comes with it. But I also think that this is a really good example of someone doing an amazing job bringing something to a new era. Like, I had never read these books. I had read The Hobbit, but I had never read Lord of the Rings, and to a new generation of people, and to a new medium. Like, and I think it's an amazing, even just the first film, it's like, it's a pretty amazing feat.
It's kind of amazing because like fantasy movies were sort of very few and far between. And I think this has like opened the idea of that. Without this, we wouldn't have Game of Thrones, the show. Right. I have a feeling we probably wouldn't have a Marvel Cinematic Universe, at least in its current like formation. It also like sort of broke the rules of like, and this might be maybe less of a legacy to be proud of. Hey, why make one movie when we can make 3 movies? Yeah. And then someone said, well, why make 3 movies when we can make 7 movies? And Marvel said, why make 7 movies when we can make 45 movies? And hey, Angelina, you don't have to watch those either. If you fall asleep during those, don't watch the Marvel movies.
I obviously have a lot of qualms with the movie, but I thought it was really enjoyable. Lauren found it pretty boring.
Fantasy is just like, it's one of those things where you either can buy into it or you don't understand why anyone gives a shit about this magic ring, I feel like. Yeah.
The more I learn about the book, like I'm tempted to just be like, I should just read these books. But the more I read a clip, not a clip. What do you call a clip of a book? I read an excerpt not that long ago, and I was like, I just don't think I want to read this, which is also fine.
Right. That is also, you don't have to read everything, but you got to read the extended editions of these books.
You got to read the appendices,
you got to read
bro.
all the appendices. You got to read the Silmarillion. Just see.
I can't even say the Silmarillion.
I'm still not sure I'm saying it right. There are Silmarils, and it's about them. So it's the Silmarillion.
What do you think, everybody? Your inner child is an idiot at gmail.com. You can call us or text us 615-576-0525. We want to thank our patrons, including Lindsey, Nell,
Jonathan Day,
Just Cuz, The Zesty,
Jacob Grimm,
Particle Man,
Damon's Australian Accent,
Heather Tuggle,
Dramatically Placed Hot Dog,
Karen Curd,
Larissa Maestro. Sorry, she just walked in and startled me. That's why I said her name like that.
Hey, Larissa. T. Smith.
Jeremy Powlen.
Kevin from Cleveland.
Captain Jean-Luc Picard.
Brandon Hardy.
The supreme ruler of this podcast.
His Honor the Mayor.
And Dan McIntyre.
Thank you all very, very much. You're helping us keep making the show. If you want to support the show like them, patreon.com/yourinnerchild's an idiot.
Do you know, I was just seeing Damon's Australian accent. It makes me wonder if I should also work on Damon's New Zealand accent.
Yeah?
So the New Zealand accent is essentially if an Australian accent fucked a Boston accent and had a baby. That's what that accent is. So one of my favorite things was me and my brother would watch the extras to Lord of the Rings, and we would quote the costume designer who was constantly talking about using various leathers. Oh, this is Aragorn's costume. We used various leathers. You'll see his trench coat is leather, comes down to about his knee. You can see here where he had to make repairs.